Good Yantif, I understand you're having a shir and a bit of a farbrengen in honor of the holiday of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, the 12th and 13th of Tammuz, which represents the liberation of the previous Rebbe from Soviet prison and a death sentence 94 years ago, where he was imprisoned and persecuted for the terrible sin of strengthening and spreading Judaism throughout Soviet Russia. Much has been said. I'm sure that much will be said tonight. I'd just like to give you a short message. So the question always comes up in these type of events, in these type of commemorations, what does it have to do with us? Happened to a big tzaddik, a rebbe, a neshama klolis, a general soul, a soul that represents the entire Jewish people. He was a lion. He was a very spiritual person. But I'm not like that. I'm a simple person. I'm a regular person. What does this have to do with me? On a general level, it could also be said that maybe it's only a Chabad Yantif, a Chabad holiday. The previous Rebbe said in a letter, I believe a year after this happened, or right after the liberation, he said that not only was I liberated, but the entire Jewish people were liberated. What does that mean? So I believe the answer in short is that the lesson over here must be the power and the abilities of an individual. As great as the previous Rebbe was, and as much of a lion heart that he had, he was a one single person against an entire Soviet apparatus, a powerful, oppressive regime that probably was not seen before or even after. And this one single person, almost single-handedly, with a very few Hasidim and other people other rabbis who were helping him, but most of the rabbis couldn't or didn't or just didn't have the energy. One single person single-handedly stood up to an entire regime. And this, I think, is the lesson of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, the 12th and 13th of Tammuz. We shouldn't say to ourselves, what can I do? I'm only one person. What can I do to spread Judaism? What can I do to combat assimilation? What can I do to strengthen Jewish education? What can I do to build up a Jewish organization? The lesson that we learned, or that we saw from the previous Rebbe 94 years ago, that still resonates today, is the lesson and the power of the individual. And this, I believe, is what he wanted to impart. And when he said that all of the people, the Yud Beis Tammuz is a holiday not just for himself, but for the entire Jewish nation, because it gave us the power, because we know that what a tzaddik does, a nasi, a leader of Jewish people, was able to bring down into this world what's called in the tzinner, in the pipeline of spiritual strength, spiritual energy in this world to each and every one of us, especially those that follow in his path and go in his ways, is the strength and the ability to succeed even against a multitude, even against a regime like the Soviet regime that was unparalleledly evil and powerful, so to speak. And today, not only is the Soviet regime a memory, a distant bad memory, but Chabad in Russia and the entire world is thriving. Chabad in the Kremlin, Chabad in Moscow and Leningrad, in all those places that was illegal and was dangerous and was life-threatening to have a school and a mikveh and a yeshiva and gathering and a shul, that is where we, Chabad, you, are thriving. This is the lesson of Yud Beis Tammuz. The lesson of Yud Beis Tammuz is, and this is relevant today, not just 94 years ago, that even though at one point in time it sounds difficult, it sounds dark, it sounds evil, the soul is in prison, but ultimately it perseveres, and ultimately the truth shines. And 94 years later, the Soviet regime is a memory, and Chabad and the previous Rebbe and his Hasidim are thriving and growing. Think about that. One more thing I want to mention is that what's amazing is, and this is something I recall every Yud Beis Tammuz, that as the previous Rebbe his sentence was muted from a, God forbid, a death sentence, and he was sentenced to life in prison or life in exile, which was later commuted on the 12th and 13th of Tammuz. Immediately before the previous Rebbe went to exile in a village called Kostrama, somewhere in Asia, somewhere in Kazakhstan, before him, a chassid went. And I believe the chassid went not because the Rebbe sent him, but because he knew that that's what a chassid is supposed to do, that's what a follower is supposed to do. A chassid of Michal Dvorkin went to the city that the previous Rebbe would be staying at or would be exiled to, not knowing that a week or two later he would be released.